Welcome to this presentation on the astrology of the Menendez murders. We'll explore Jose Menendez and the karma character revealed and associated with his murder by his sons Lyle and Erik Menendez. This presentation is my interest in promoting the notion of forensic astrology. This is the use of karmic astrology to reveal the negative karma in a person's chart as a potential predisposition for an individual to engage in criminal behavior. This can become potential corroborating evidence as to whether an individual suspect may have committed some form of abuse or a crime or been a victim. Having studied the astrology charts of many criminals, including thieves, murderers, rapists, and even serial killers, certain negative karmic astrology configurations are usually evident. Hi, I'm Altazar, professional master spiritual astrologer with over 35 years experience. My contact information I'm going to reveal at this time. For those of you who may have an interest in contacting me for a free introductory and complimentary reading, astrology reading, and also viewing my website, www.altazarastrology.com. I hope that's visible now. My YouTube channel has over 30 videos on a range of subjects, as I'm an astrologer that covers everything from spiritual and personal growth, relationship compatibility, career potential, infant and child astrology and their potential behavioral issues, as well as astromapping, astrocartography, your favorable locations around the world. So you're welcome to email me or text to schedule, and those addresses are located here. So now we will proceed further into this interesting and highly insightful presentation. The underlying implication here is that spiritual astrology is a deep metaphysical representation of how ego-based attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors, karma, if you will, for an individual are revealed as patterns from prior lifetimes and indicate to what extent or not a person is evolving in this lifetime toward a positive, harmonious resonance with the love of the universe and other people, which can be a reflection of that. And therefore, getting beyond negativity fueled by fear and the delusion of ego separation. In this presentation, I will reveal through spiritual astrology the karmic implications regarding the murder of Jose Menendez, who was a wealthy record company executive and resident of Beverly Hills, California, murdered by his sons Lyle and Erik Menendez, who were convicted of first-degree murder, which also included that murder of their mother, Kitty, during the incident which occurred on August 20th, 1989. After 35 years in prison, a review of the conviction of the Menendez brothers, who, by the way, were convicted to life imprisonment, has become the material for a recent Netflix documentary and requests from interested parties and relatives to have the Los Angeles District Attorney implement the possibility of a new trial or support parole for the Menendez brothers. Now, this is due to the fact that after a hung jury or mistrial was declared at their first trial, the presiding judge decided to exclude the first trial evidence associated with the emotional, physical, and sexual abuse the brothers may have experienced from their father, presented as evidence and motive for why they committed the murder. Essentially, a traumatic history, the defense was claiming, fueled fear for their lives, and not necessarily the prosecutor's main contention that their motive was mainly greed in order to inherit the millions of dollars of their parents' assets. So in the second trial, all that evidence was excluded, and the jury only got to hear about the incident, the obvious confession of the brothers, and uh, the evidence associated with the material assets that they would inherit. So, my intention here is not to enhance a defense of murder or violence towards others who have experienced being threatened or even severely abused, but to offer additional insight into potential violence or criminal behavior from the karmic or spiritual perspective that is indicated in karmic spiritual astrology. So, from the perspective of forensic astrology, I will be offering insight into the astrology chart of Jose Menendez and whether there is evidence revealing a karmic predisposition for him to engage in sexual abuse or violence, which was a critical part of the defense of the Menendez brothers' motivation presented in the first trial. I will also review the charts of Lyle and Erik Menendez, indicating their potential for being victims of violence and or sexual abuse, and the potential tensions in relationship compatibility with their father, Jose. The point I hope to prove is that our relationships, especially with our family of origin, are not just a coincidence, and that these relationships may have a moral, ethical, and or spiritual growth lesson for our soul growth. So now I'm going to bring up the astrology natal chart of Jose Menendez and discuss this karmic perspective and potential implications. So now you'll be seeing here the astrology chart of Jose Menendez, and this chart is based on a Google revelation or Wikipedia revelation of his birth date and location of birth. Now, I do not have the accurate birth time of these individuals, which would present the most accurate chart. But without the birth time, we use 12 noon as the midpoint of the day. And that gives, I would say, 80 to 90% accuracy on most of the karmic potential issues, and especially the most significant issues associated with the predisposition of behavior. And so I will start out as I do in any life purpose reading for a client to talk about um, this chart of Jose Menendez as an individual, born on a Saturday on May 6, 1944. And what this indicates, someone born on Saturday, Saturn Day, often has a tough life. A tough life meaning they may come from very humble or impoverished or very challenging political economic childhood and have the potential for being a bootstrapper in life. In other words, someone who works hard, builds skills, credentials, education, and meritorious advancement in their life to higher and higher positions of stature and material wealth. And so Jose Menendez is a perfect example of a successful Saturnian coming from humble roots in Cuba and yet having had at least some degree of socioeconomic stature before the revolution, and yet got to the United States with near nothing, and but not short of the fact that he had deep ambition and deep intelligence and skill for uh, a desire to elevate his stature and work hard to build a credible professional success, which he did ultimately, as eventually becoming a successful record company executive and being able to move to the Los Angeles area and owning a wonderful and beautiful home in Beverly Hills, California. Now, when we look at someone's chart here, uh, we look at the year he's born, 1944, and we add those numbers together. 1 and 9 is 10, 4 and 4 is 8, 18, 1 and 8 is 9. So the calling for people born in 1944, the year of the wood monkey in Chinese astrology, is to be someone who can be um, and or promotes in a dramatic or uh, through the media or through the culture higher understanding of the meaning of life. He's born in the year of the wood monkey. Someone with the number 6 has, in there, it doesn't matter what month, a calling to evolve a sensibility of emotional and psychological awareness and how to better engage, especially their family, their personal relationships, and cultivate authentic emotional empathy. Whether they do that is another story. So now we look at the chart itself, and Jose Menendez is a Taurus, and his sun sign is in the area of Taurus associated with Virgo. So he has a calling to really use his mental and intellectual abilities in a communicative manner that promotes material, financial, and business dynamics. And Taurus is the sign of money, business, finance. Tauruses are here to somehow or another uh, manifest their skills, talents, and abilities to towards a productive contribution to society through business and or professional services that advance the material well-being of society and themselves in the process, to experience prosperity based on that authentic professional advocacy. Now, the problem here is that this is all well and good. It shows with his Mars in 20 degrees Cancer that he has, a strong kind of professional orientation towards affecting consciousness, and also a strong emphasis related to family. And that Mars aspect is favorably to his sun sign. So there shows a karmically evolved, constructive drive for professional development and ambitious leadership in society. His North Node in Leo implies that he has the most important drive in his life to cultivate uh, a more accurate experience of self-worth, a more deepened understanding of what it means to find love within himself and share that with others through an inspirational form of creativity, which he very likely, found comfort through sponsoring or being a producer or an advocate for uh, people in the music industry. However, Pluto in Leo are those who have a deep subconscious drive either for um, a great accomplishment in their identity and personal development, and also may have a proclivity towards a certain obsession with uh, romanticism and sexuality as a part of that. Even, very dynamic and or flirtatious dynamics associated with uh, experimentation or exploration of sexual experiences, if they are not on a higher minded, personal growth, transformational, spiritual path. So here's where we get into some of the forensic evidence, because Jose Menendez has Pluto in Leo, as I've described, in an adverse angle to his Mercury, and in an orb to his Sun sign, and also in a direct dynamic with his Venus position. So that is potentially a karmic configuration of someone who has had the karma and or predisposition in this life towards sexual addiction and an attraction to the use of sexual energy and their uh, authoritative relationship with others uh, in a potentially sexually exploitative dynamic. And when a person has an adverse angle of a planet that has a certain karmic implication to their sun sign represents the potential experience one has had with their father, and to what extent their father has been both a constructive role model or potentially someone who had been unavailable or abusive. And And often the experience with one's father determines to what extent a person has been guided morally or ethically in their behavior to trust in a higher power, God, if you will, or some degree of ethical, moral, spiritual compass to guide their life. So this implies for Jose that to some extent his father may have been a role model for ambition and drive in a positive way in society, but his father was not potentially a healthy or constructive role model in terms of his own well-being, his spiritual and emotional and personal well-being, and and therefore may not really have engaged Jose, and it helped guide him towards a healthier identity, well-being. And then we see not only does he have the Pluto in the adverse angle to the Venus and Mercury, but he also has Jupiter in Leo. So that alone, Jupiter in Leo, Jupiter is about how we expand and express our identity in a forthright and connective way with the world or society or our culture. So Jupiter in Leo people, not unlike those born in the year of the monkey, which correlates with Leo, are inclined to be very vivacious and charismatic and outgoing and dramatic and, enjoy being the center of attention and possibly quite narcissistic, depending upon the karmic energy. And we see here that he has Jupiter in the square to these, especially his sun sign, which again implies his father may have been somewhat ostentatious or self-absorbed, but not necessarily, uh, or even a risk taker, but not necessarily sincerely personal guide for Jose in his younger years, reflecting Jose's own karma of being, in fact, quite driven, self-absorbed, narcissistic. Some spiritual books describe someone who has Jupiter squaring their sun sign as, look out, here comes God. You can't get that's the ultimate charisma of narcissism and self-exaltation. And the two do imply potential uh, desire to be worshipped by their children. And that is further exemplified by Mars in the sign Cancer. Mars, Cancer is a sign of one's family, one's home, one's domestic environment. Mars has to do directly with one's physical drive, their sexual energy, their assertiveness, their drive for egoic expression or dominance. And so Mars square the moon. The moon has to do with the experience with one's mother and the experience of home and family and how one may approach that. Well, this moon opposite his Venus and square his Mars also implies that, and this is again not an indictment of his parents, this is his karma, what he brings from his prior lifetimes, and whatever he experiences in his childhood are to recreate the lessons that he is here to learn. It's not an indictment or blame. No one's a victim from this point of view. It's just the school of life. Mars square the moon implies mother also may have had difficulty in her life, may have had self-destructive tendencies, may have had rather turbulent temper and been somewhat domineering. Uh, the moon opposition to Venus implies mother was not necessarily happy in her role of being a mother, but was, doing it out of duty, obligation, and or uh, coercion in respect to her family or her husband. And so this implies that Jose, uh, in regards to his home, family, or domestic situation, can have a trigger or a hair trigger temper and uh, have a proclivity towards being or having the need to be in absolute control or be domineering, and or Mars square the moon also implies, as the moon indicates how one experiences emotional fulfillment, domestic satisfaction. Uh, Mars square implies those who may lack a deep experience of constructing their family or home environment in a nurturing dynamic and therefore seek uh, sexual experiences to give them some degree of the delusion of intimacy or emotional satisfaction. So I will conclude this point of view by implying, that if this was presented as evidence, forensic evidence, in a trial, which astrology just does not have the credibility yet in American society, I would testify that based, and again, these predispositions or karmic proclivities are no guarantee or absolute that this person has or would or did engage in these behaviors. But it shows a strong predisposition, and if evidence is presented historically in terms of this person's behavior that corroborates these uh, predispositions, then there is reasonable, solid evidence of that possibility. So, what I'm indicating here is that Jose Menendez, a highly driven, ambitious uh, business and public service professional, highly materialistic, uh, and one who may have been so driven for his ambition and public dynamic for status and material wealth, uh, had not adequately engaged in healing his deep-seated psychological wounds coming from his childhood, associated with both his father and his mother. And psychologists will testify, as I can imply, that due to that deep-seated woundedness and lack of internal emotional satisfaction or empathy, Jose Menendez would be a highly compulsively driven sexual addict and predator that quite likely could perpetrate that abuse on his children, especially male children, and that the Mars square to his moon, moon being domestic environment, home, and family, that he would actually have a psychological predisposition to apparently try to create some sense of intimacy and what he would think would be love with his children through his sexual abuse of them. So I'm now going to bring up the charts of Lyle and Erik Menendez and compare to that of Jose Menendez. And we'll see what also that reveals. So now you'll see on the left the chart I've already presented for Jose. We're now going to reveal that of Lyle Menendez. See if we can show that a little better. And there we go. And then we're going to also have here, and I'll bring that over for better viewing. Okay, I'm not sure it'll be better viewing, but let's hope it is. That of Erik Menendez. Okay, so starting with the chart of Lyle, I'm going to move me over here. Lyle Menendez is born in the Chinese year of the fire sheep. Now, the point of view I'm just going to present here is that of compatibility. In other words, additional evidence, let's say if forensic astrology had credibility in a court of law, uh, the prosecutor might ask, well, can you show whether Lyle Menendez and Jose Menendez have compatibility? And if they do have, and to what degree they have compatibility, that would kind of undermine your argument about uh, Lyle or Jose's potential for abusing them. So, first of all, compatibility and relationship compatibility between lovers, parents, parent and child, or whatever, has a foundation in Chinese astrology. So, um, what is the potential compatibility between someone born in the year of the uh, sheep? And by the way, the year of the fire sheep is largely 1967, but it goes through the end of January of 68. So Lyle Menendez is a fire sheep. And as I've shared, Jose Menendez is a wood monkey. So in Chinese astrology, those are not compatible people. Uh, there's varying degrees of compatibility, but let's take the elements. Lyle being fire and Jose being wood. What does fire do to wood? Burn. Okay. Burns it up. So right there, that implies a certain lack of harmonious energetics. Then we talk about the year of the sheep. People born in the year of the sheep are here to evolve their sensitivity, their depth of emotional perceptivity. They tend to be people who have a depth of empathy and can be creative artistically as well as be able to engage the world, uh, if you will, maternality, have a certain mothering or caring quality. And so we do see in the chart of Lyle Menendez uh, this Sun, Mercury, and Capricorn. Uh, and his sun sign is actually in a somewhat compatible connection to Jose's, both earth signs. And yet, Lyle, with this grand trine here, Sun Mercury, trining the moon in Taurus, and trining Pluto Uranus, and especially with his Mercury, implies that he is a much higher or evolved soul than Jose Menendez. That's why, if you're willing to be open to the spiritual perspective, people who are born, Lyle and Erik, are born into a very wealthy family with a lot of privilege for education and our artistic opportunity and social upliftment. And this grand trine here implies that Lyle, from his past life karma, has earned that stature of birth because of his favorable karma of social humanitarian activism and depth of communication and empathy for the upliftments in society. As Venus trine Saturn also implies, he has been a socially responsible person in terms of his values for lifestyle. Yet his Venus square Jupiter implies that he has a certain proclivity towards ostentatiousness and even also flirtatiousness romantically. And his Mars in Pisces square Neptune implies that he has had the potential of having engaged in varying forms of deception or sexual abuse of or dynamics of infidelity in relationships combined with the Venus Jupiter square. So there's some of his hard karma. And you'll note his Mars in a wide orb to his moon, Mars square. Remember, we talked about Jose's Mars square and the moon? Both have Mars square the moon. The potential of experiencing violence in the context of his family and or violence and aggression can also be connected to sexual abuse. And when a person is born under the sign of Capricorn, it implies that they have some kind of personal growth and healing issue very connected to their father. So we'll look at seeing where there is any other dynamic here. See, on the other hand, you see the Saturn, which also is associated with one's father, in this less than favorable but positive karmic aspect to his sun sign, does indicate that his father was at least a constructive role model for his professional development in society, and that his father did have a certain ability to be successful in a professional context in society. But on the other hand, there we see a problem. Now, where is there I've already talked about the Venus position. The Venus is the planet of love, or to what extent someone is in a loving, shared value of lifestyle relationship. So Lyle's Venus in Sagittarius implies that he values personal growth, philosophy, culture, upliftment, and his Venus is in an adverse angle to Jose's Uranus in Leo. I mean, Uranus in Gemini. So Uranus in Gemini is opposite his Venus. And if this was between a man and a woman, it would imply that there is a very unstable and potentially disruptive connection between these people. Also, Jose's Uranus in Gemini forms an adverse angle to Lyle's Jupiter, further implying a lack of cultural or personal growth or spiritual connection between them. And we also look at Saturn. So Saturn in Gemini here is in an adverse angle to Lyle's Uranus and Pluto, which implies that Jose and his approach to his own personal growth issues and his relationship with society offers no favorable, positive upliftment for Lyle's sensibilities for social relations and or financial dynamics. So if the judge is requiring evidence of compatibility, the only significant evidence, and let me just end it with Lyle's Neptune in Scorpio being opposite Jose's there. And, oh, well, I haven't even presented the worst case scenario here. Neptune implies just a potential deception or secretive dynamics between them that would not lend towards trust. But when you have Mars, the planet of aggression, the planet of sexual energy, the planet of assertion or assertiveness, and egoic expression, Lyle's Mars is in a square to that Uranus. So we've seen here that Lyle's Venus opposite Jose's Uranus and Lyle's Mars square. Mars in a square to another person's Uranus implies potential highly unpredictable, if not egoic clashes of will and or violence, and often can imply even political violence or enemies from soldiers of opposing forces, if not just very serious differences in political, social, and or organizational approaches. So this dynamic here presents little or no positivity of a rapport between these people. In other words, if these two people met each other at a social event or, a cultural activity or introduced between each other from friends, they would want nothing to do with each other. Okay, so that's that point of view. Further highlighting the difficulty that Lyle might experience from his father. Now, it is and was presented in the trial that Lyle was the first, being the elder brother, to experience the sexual abuse from Jose. And given what I've talked about in terms of their incompatibility, that sexual abuse supposedly went on for, I don't know, several years or so, but eventually became more anchored in Jose's relations with Erik Menendez. Now, here we see that, okay, we're looking for, again, to start with, compatibility. Erik being born in the Chinese year of the metal dog. again, Jose, year of the monkey, wood monkey. And so I've talked about fire burning wood, that at least wood can fuel a fire there. So there's can be some degree of compatibility, let's say between a fire monkey and back to Lyle, the, a wood monkey and a fire sheep. Okay. Uh, but, again, if you picture a monkey can be swinging in trees and running all around a sheep person, outsmart them. People born near the monkey are often quite shrewd and quite uh, loquacious and even manipulative or uh, strategically uh, advantageous, and quick-minded. Now, Erik, being born in the year of the metal dog, metal is often considered the most incompatible element with a wood person. Here we have wood monkey, metal dog. Now, the most favorable Chinese years for Jose would be the years of the rat or the year of the dragon. Uh, Now, the year of the dragon is actually considered the most incompatible year for someone like Erik, who was born in the year of the dog. Uh, so that would imply that even Jose's friends, who might be born in complementary years, would not be very complementary with Erik. But the year of the dog in itself, if you think about a dog and a monkey, you know, you want to look at that imagery, you could see with Lyle, a monkey would jump out of a tree and ride the back of a sheep, and jump all over the sheep and scare the sheep. Uh, Erik being a dog, well, you could picture a dog and a monkey out in the jungle or in a field, and the dog chasing the monkey, but the monkey outsmarting him and climbing a tree, and the dog would be at the base barking up at the monkey. So, generally speaking, people born in the year of the monkey, especially the wood monkey, are not easily compatible with someone born in the year of the metal dog. Uh, and we see that Erik's born on a Friday. So Erik that implies he's much more sensitive and even artistic or sports professionally oriented, which he was inclined, I believe, in tennis. At any rate, there we also look to the sun sign. Lyle's sun sign was about the only factor that was compatible with Jose's sun sign, and both of them being called to find a pragmatic material relationship with society. However, Erik, being a Sun Neptune conjunction in Sagittarius, um, no affinity with his father's personal planets there. Uh, Now, well, let's look for the Mercury in Sagittarius. Well, no affinity there. And in fact, a rather severely difficult connection because Jose's Saturn in Gemini is going to be opposite Mercury in Sagittarius. That implies father, the Saturnian is going to be controlling and dominant, and so possibly adverse to Erik's favorable direction. And we see that would be the case because that Saturn in 24 Gemini would be also in a square to Erik's Pluto. And that implies a further kind of power struggle between Jose's intentions and desire for control and Erik's deeper needs for personal self-expression of his own volition. And so there's a pretty severe problem. And we see in the presentation of their trial dispositions, that was the case. But let's go further here because the evidence is clear. Uh, the uh, the only potential compatibility and affinity, or the fact that Jose might have a certain attraction to Erik more than Lyle, is that his Pluto being in Leo would be in a trine to the Sun Neptune. That would add to a certain delusionary sexual romantic uh, experience for Jose towards Erik. Now, here's where we have another also delusionary attraction of Jose perpetrating a sexual assault under the delusion of family care or love, is that his Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Taurus would be opposite the Moon, Jupiter, and Venus of Erik. And not only that, but you see in Erik's natal chart, Erik has Saturn in Taurus, opposite his Moon, Jupiter, and Venus, which implies that he could karma is it can be a karmic boomerang. You know, people get back what they put out. So an opposition is often demonstrative of what someone might get back uh, in their next life or what in this life from what they may have done in a prior lifetime. And so Saturn opposite Venus, Jupiter, and the Moon implies someone who may have had an extraordinary uh, attachment to social status and material stature in society as a way to win favor with their family or their romantic partner. And with Jose's Sun and Mercury, especially right on his Saturn, right on top of it, it implies that Jose would be the karmic instrument to be the reflection of Erik's own lesson about materiality and status being the basis for love or worth in regards to one's family. But the real nutcracker here is, again, for the two of them, I'm not sure you can see the charts here, but well, here we go. Jose, so the most indicative planet of someone's sexual expression, which we've already talked about, that unless Jose engaged in trauma, psychological healing, and trauma therapy and anger management, his Mars square of the Moon implies that he would have the delusion along with the Pluto Jupiter square in Leo to attempt to experience intimacy, love, and somehow connection with his children or his family through his anger, his violence, or sexual abuse. And his Mars at 20, Cancer, is in a square to Erik's Mars at 24, Libra. Classic for, let's say, well, whether you be gay or straight, two people involved with, who know each other or may explore a relationship or have one, will here have the Mars square Mars is the most uh, powerful sexual attraction between two people, and also mask. Here's the cosmic joke: the more powerful a person evaluates or engages into a relationship based on their physicality, materiality, and sexual attraction, and the more heightened that attraction is, the more likely it is masking mental, emotional, and spiritual discord and severe conflict. And a Mars square Mars can often not only have and or enhance an almost uncontrollable sexual connection between two people, it can also be used by someone like Jose, who may not have emotional empathy and or consciousness, uh, as an outlet for their frustrations on an emotional level, their resentments or their anger with the other person. So in relationships with others who have this combination, often if they have a conflict or a difference of opinion with each other, or an angry altercation, sometimes they just solve that problem by having intense sex with the other person. And also that Jose's Mars in Cancer is in a direct opposition to the Mercury and especially the sun sign of Lyle Menendez, which implies that Jose as well could be motivated towards, whenever frustrated or uh, needing to want to engage or dominate, he would be inclined to dominate Lyle through anger, intimidation, and or sexual abuse. Lastly, I'm going to present what we call the composite charts. That is the combination of Jose and Lyle Menendez birth charts as you've observed them into one chart. That is a synthesis taking the midpoints of each of their charts into one chart, which can summarize the most salient points associated with the relationship. And we'll do the same for Jose and Erik's charts, which is really the final sensibility in any perspective of astrological relationship compatibility as to what extent two people may be compatible or have some real adverse problems. So here we go. So now on your left, you'll see the chart of the composite chart of Lyle and Jose Menendez. So, in a nutshell, what this shows here with the Sun and Mercury in Pisces is the potential for two people to have a lot of work to do in evolving a family dynamic with each other that contributes to mutual spiritual growth. And there is that potential. And the Saturn Mars combination does imply that there can be somewhat of a successful connection between them associated with society and the material socioeconomic stature of one or both of the individuals. On the other hand, we really look to Venus to see to what extent there might be a real loving relationship between the two people. some degree of compatibility, some degree of mutual shared values for lifestyle and well-being. And there we see that not only is it not there, but it is severe, difficult. We see the Venus square Saturn, and that implies more purely a materialistic relationship between the two. And if one of the individuals is their father or their parent or the authority, then it implies that that person, Jose in this case, would be more inclined to uh, view Lyle as an extension of himself and hoping that Lyle could be a source of pride and status for himself, not an authentic, caring consideration for Lyle as a person. And that's further exacerbated by the Saturn-Mars conjunction, which is a severely focused, materialistic, authoritarian, controlling proclivity on the part of the father figure, square both Uranus and the moon, but looking at the moon is enough. As I've shared and many already know, the moon is about your approach to home, family, your emotional needs, and your domestic environment. And this implies that Jose very likely could be a severely detrimental, controlling, authoritarian, and even sexually abusive connection with Lyle. So the Jupiter opposite the Venus and further implies a lack of spiritual or cultural or ethical or philosophical support for each other's values for lifestyle. Clearly, from this perspective I've shared on the other charts, difficult, turbulent, violent, and great evidence supporting Lyle's case of severe abuse, sexual abuse, violence, turbulence, manipulation on the part of Jose, power control dynamics. And we look at Erik's chart. Again, we look for, well, at least in Lyle's chart, there was some degree of support for his identity development professionally or in relationships to society. But in Erik's chart, we see that there's a Saturn square that implies complete lack of connection for socioeconomic role modeling. But not only that, we see that it's a Saturn T square. By the way, Saturn in adverse angle is the worst in a composite chart in terms of controlled battles and lack of empathy and all sorts of tension and karmic challenge. And so Saturn here in Gemini squaring Mars and Pluto. Well, and Mars and Pluto opposite the Mercury and just out of orb with the Sun implies here a turbulent, potentially violent, controlling experience. The father figure, in this case, being a dominant, controlling figure who would adversely affect the sexuality and values for action and well-being on the part of Erik. Furthermore, we see The Venus position does imply Jose would be supportive in terms of financial opportunity for Erik to evolve his well-being professionally in society. Um, and yet, the the Venus square the moon, here we come back to the family. Venus square moon Neptune implies that there is the mother figure not being in any kind of support of Erik or an understanding due to her own emotional ineptitude, and that her availability would be erratic, if not irresponsible, in regards to being a role model for Erik's values, for lifestyle. Yet she could, at times, with the trine to Jupiter, be a caring one who would demonstrate some moral compass. But the father figure here, represented by Saturn and the Mars and Pluto, uh, opposite the Mercury Sun, all imply harsh, materialistic, controlling, domineering, and potentially abusive uh, dynamics for a narcissistic control over his son. So, the only redeeming, if you want to call it redeeming dynamic here with the Mercury moon, is again with his mother being at times, for her own sensibility, attempting to be nurturing and empathic for Erik's sensibility in relationship experiences. So I'll conclude by, if this were a court of law or a prosecutor's office, in regards to any evidence, well, and to support the defense in regards to the testimony of both Lyle and Erik regarding a whole history of traumatic violence, control, domineering, manipulation, and sexual abuse. From the karmic astrological point of view, the evidence is absolutely clearly true, or potentially true. And so I leave it up to the courts and the current LA district attorney and the parole board. Hopefully, there is quite um, evidence surfacing now from others who experienced Jose, including recording and artists who may have been sexually abused by Jose Menendez, and other sources, including relatives of the Menendez, who are uh, supporting what was presented in the first trial for the Menendez brothers, uh, that could have seriously mitigated the sentencing or the severity of the sentence that the Menendez brothers received. And now that they've served, I guess, close to 35 years in prison, some might, and you can consider too, this additional forensic astrology as to whether they are worthy of being paroled, especially given the mistrial of the first trial, where all of this implication of traumatic violence, controlling, manipulation, and sexual abuse as a history of their childhood was presented and resulted in a hung jury. So thank you all for participating and following through on this. If you managed to hold on throughout this, I appreciate a like if you got some insight from it, or please subscribe if you want to be receiving notices of future uh, videos. And I will again present my contact information. So please do contact me at this email address or go to my website, altazarastrology.com, or continue viewing these videos on the YouTube channel. And for those of you who mentioned to me after contact this video or others you viewed on this YouTube channel, you will be eligible for a free introductory astrology reading privately with me, and therefore contact me through email or text to schedule. I wish you well.